Today's guest is Tom Jacobs, who sold his fitness business in 2017, which he owned for 9 years, to become the Impact pilot, helping entrepreneurs generate more income through better sales conversation strategy and using stories to sell. Tom has a BFA degree in theater from DePaul University in Chicago and holds his private pilot license for single engine planes and is scuba certified. He is has licenses for land, sea, air, which will come in handy if we're ever in a zombie apocalypse, which I totally agree with. So, Tom, thank you very much for being on. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I'm super excited to do this because I know I've mentioned this on the podcast many times that I had my own fitness business and that imploded, and some listeners do know my story, but this is actually the first time I am having somebody on the show who actually knows me from that time. So like Tom was one of the instrumental coaches in like the organization that I was a part of that helped me build my studio. So this is like a really cool full circle moment for me. So thank you very much for being on here.
Yeah, no worries. I love full circles and coming back around and seeing how everybody's been doing in the last 10 years or so. It's
That is
great.
true. So yeah, I'd love for you to just give us more context on who you are and how you got to doing what you're doing, because it's even from just that short bio, it's like there's a lot of cool things that you do. So I'd love for you to just give us some context on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So after I sold the business in 2017, it was maybe you went through the same thing, but like I had this like, what do I do next type of moment. And I really didn't know. And so just started dabbling in consulting, working with other fitness business owners, and then I got into other businesses as well, or helping other business types of business owners. And I just never really found my footing. But what everything came back to my selling skills, and so I started kind of being a mercenary salesperson. So I'd be hired out by different companies to sell their products, primarily online, which is what I wanted because I wanted to travel the world and not be tied to the brick and mortar anymore. And so in the last 5 years, I've spent most of my time in Asia. I've spent obviously time in Europe and America, but traveling around quite a bit and just seeing different cultures, living in different cultures, and really kind of immersing myself in those cultures. And so now I live in Taiwan, in Taipei, Taiwan, and I've been here for 3 years. I kind of hung out during COVID. It was a really great place to hang out because they kind of had everything dialed in and everything was still open. So it was a great place to kind of be for that. And so now, in that sales aspect, now I'm coaching people on how to sell. And then also, I started a call center when I was living in the Philippines for a while. And I started a call center where we are now booking appointments so that the salespeople can now make more sales. So it's kind of that whole conversion piece that I saw lacking in the fitness industry when I was in it and coaching. And now I wanted to kind of create another business to help other service-based businesses like that, like fitness centers, chiropractors, medical doctors as well.
Yeah, I love that because like I actually do remember some of the things that you used to teach like for sales. And like I remember things that I've implemented from your work, like even in my studio and to some degree, like in what I do now. So I mean, I know it's like rare, like everybody's always like humping themselves up on podcasts, but I'm like, if you guys are listening to this and you have this type of problem, like legit, I can vouch for multiple different perspective. So yeah, that's super cool. And I think one common thing that I always find both with clients that I'm working with now and that comes up on the podcast is this idea of like following the breadcrumbs, to lead you towards whatever is next. And it's certainly been true in my story, and it seems to be in yours. And I love how you like landed on something that's so aligned with what you do and how you
Mm.
do it. Um, so yeah, before I go on, if you want to comment on any of that, by all means, you can add to it.
No, That's great. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So yeah, I mean, in that case, how can I support you today?
Yeah. Things seem to be going really, really well, which for a lot of entrepreneurs, myself included, is a time to worry when things are too comfortable. And things are definitely really comfortable right now. And so that anxiety of like, when's the other shoe going to drop type of, you know, whether it be another COVID or another war or whatever is going on in the world that's going to derail or take me off the direction that I want to go.
Okay,
Or if it's me, that's going to take me off the direction that I want to go too.
got it. So
Yeah.
is this something that's been like an ongoing pattern for you in general? Like I kind of start to panic when things are steady, when things are comfortable, when things are going well.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So would you say that are much more comfortable fighting fires than you are just letting things go and kind of slow and steady building them up?
I wouldn't necessarily say fighting fires, but I like new things quite a bit.
Mhm.
So this is going really well. What can I now? Let me just let that go, and now let me try this new thing right now, and that's the fun, creative thing that I love to do, or it distracts me from like the core business that's doing really well, but mm, maybe I'm sabotaging it a little bit by doing other things instead of concentrating on the core business and being okay with things being okay.
Okay. So is this more about you not being okay when things are okay, or is it more about like I have a genuine desire and need to have like novelty in the things that I do?
I think it's the novelty in the things that I do. Yeah.
Okay. So
Fresh and exciting.
okay.
Yeah.
So if you don't have fresh and exciting things, then fill in the blank.
I feel bored.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you feel bored, then fill in the blank for that one.
Mm, I don't know what to do.
Okay. And so continue that same thought. So if I don't know what to do, then fill in that blank.
Mm, I don't know what to do. Then I don't have like a direction or a purpose.
Okay. So if things are going well, then job is done. I don't have a purpose anymore. I don't have significance. So okay. So that seems to resonate. So what lands about that one?
Yeah.
So if you dive a bit deeper into like, well, what is it about that
Mm.
resonates as true for you?
Um, I guess like the idle hands saying, I forget what, or idle feet grow moss or something like that. So I think that was part of my upbringing was always you have to be doing something to move yourself forward. I played violin as a child, and it was always having to practice and practicing. It was never there was never that end moment. It was always just out of reach and just up. So it was always something to really strive for. Yet it was never like coasting or better or good enough. And so I think that's brought me into where I am today, where I keep pushing and pushing and pushing, where maybe I don't need to be pushing so much. Maybe doing what's I've been doing is okay. And yet I get anxiety sometimes when like everything is okay. Like what's going on?
Got it. Well, firstly, I just want to acknowledge you for allowing yourself to be like witnessed in that way because I do think that a lot of entrepreneurs get into that position. And I've certainly had instances of that as well. So I get it from a personal perspective and from seeing how much significance we do get out of accomplishment and performance and all of these other things. And there is a lot of beauty in that, and there's a lot of gifts in that. I think what you're more alluding to, allowing yourself to be witnessed in, is the distortion of that.
Mm.
Like, who am I without the performance? Who am I genuinely as I am without that? I think that's such an important question. So I just want to thank you for bringing it into the space. And if you look back to some of the things that you just mentioned about, okay, well, even growing up, like there was never idle time, because idle time was essentially wasted that I could be producing or doing something else. Was
Mm.
that your choice, or was that choice made for you at that
It
time?
was it was definitely made for me.
Right. And if that choice was made for you, and if you went against it, what would happen?
A punishment.
Right.
Yeah,
And what's very correlated with punishment?
that's bad, right?
Yeah. And what's the reaction when you're bad inside of your body?
Oh yeah, doesn't feel good.
Right. Generally, it's also anxiety.
Anxiety, right? Yeah.
Right. Like I'm anticipating something bad is going to happen if I am idle, and if I'm good, and if I'm not doing something.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. So what's landing for you there?
Um, that that is spot on. And I think that's what really drove me to sales as well, because it was instant gratification. You knew, like, every new call that you had, it was either win or loss. And that was the novelty, was just. And now, like, I'm thinking of, in my last couple of weeks, been making a lot of sales and everything's going. I'm like, yes, I'm really energized. And when that's not happening, or if it's just a general growth, it's not like super busy, then it's like, something's wrong.
Hmm.
Something feel right.
Which makes sense, right? Because if there is, let's just say that that child part of you that's
Mm.
essentially anticipating trouble, anticipating punishment, if I'm not in the process of and or performing, right? It's now being reflected back in the business, right? Like the idleness means, oh shit, like, a parent figure is going to come along. And even though it's not true for you as an adult, that part still recognizes that pattern as like, okay, well, punishment is coming, better get to doing something.
Yeah.
So if that's resonating, the part about novelty, to what
Mm.
degree is that actually about your genuine love for novelty? And to what degree is it the relief from that anticipated punishment?
It's probably 100% in the relief of the punishment, for sure.
Okay. And I think that's a
That's it.
very important distinction, because like if I'm constantly using the narrative consciously, well, I just like novelty. It sounds
Mm.
very innocent. It sounds very good. It's clearly gotten you like a lot of different skill sets and cool experiences.
Mm.
And it's actually a lie for what is actually driving it.
Right.
Okay. So what's landing for you there?
Yeah, that it's kind of that fear of the punishment is what's really driving the novelty, or wanting to do different things all the time.
Yeah. And I think there's also like a gift part of that, which is like, I think you do enjoy different types of activities. You do enjoy aspects of that. Clearly, you enjoy learning different skills, etc., even just from like reading your bio.
Mhm.
And as I've said many times on this podcast, it's like our primary strengths become our first distortions.
Mhm.
So this natural part of me that actually likes to do new things and excels in learning ends up being hijacked by essentially this part of us that's really young, operating in an adult body, and distorts it into convincing, well, I just really like novelty. So I'll chase
Yeah.
novelty, but really I'm just actually chasing relief from this anxiety that something bad is going to happen.
Yep.
Okay. So again,
100%. Yeah.
what's landing for you there, and why?
Yeah. I mean, it would be great to say, it's the creative in me that wants to create all these new things, which, I mean, I think to some aspect it is. But the reality is that it's that pre-programming of me from early childhood, all the way up until graduating high school, that's what is programmed me to do all these different things and have all these different experiences, which is not a bad thing. But if it's keeping me from just being me, I guess, or in my space, then that's probably not the healthiest.
So if you go a bit deeper into that last part, like keeping me from being in this space, like what do you mean by that?
Mm. Um, like that cycle of starting something, it going fine, and then this anxiety coming up about, oh, it's not going to be good enough, so you better keep working on it. So keep tinkering with things and not allowing enough time, or just allowing things to progress naturally without that tinkering. I think sometimes will sabotage things and make it worse, which then will be a bigger project that will be really great to work on.
Right. It's like I'm basically looking for problems to solve so I can find relief from
Yeah,
that
from
seeming
that
burnout.
anxiety.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in many ways, then it sounds like you could possibly be creating problems where there might not actually be problems.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
if we
That would.
then dive into that, like if you look at everything we just spoke about,
Yeah.
how do you think this is creating problems in your business?
Mm. Well, I think at times I'm not super clear with my staff in terms of the direction, or they see me shifting direction and then wonder like what's going on. And so then their performance can be affected as well. Because now they're trying to keep up with where's Tom going now versus where was he yesterday or the day before.
Okay. So it's kind of like a top-down focus issue,
Yeah.
right? Like if the focus keeps shifting so you can feel okay, we're never really building enough momentum to like move the needle forward on certain things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm,
Any other way that that's affecting your business?
no. Mm. I think that's the major thing is that, and of course, if the staff is constantly moving with me as well, then that's not going to be great for our client side. So then the churn rate is starting to increase a little bit. And so what do we need? So obviously it's top down. So it's clearly like me needing to focus or stay on the path without getting out of that pain, so to speak, of worrying that mom's gonna yell at me or take my TV away.
Right. And because you mentioned the churn of the client side, right? Like if I'm changing my mind too much with the staff and we're changing direction, etc., that's affecting their ability to actually provide the service in the standard that it needs to. Obviously, it's going to affect churn. To your subconscious, what do you think might be the benefit of that churn?
More projects,
Right. More problems to then
more
solve, more
problems to
projects to
solve.
fix, more things to tinker, right?
Yeah,
More significance and purpose that I actually have in this role,
right.
right? So it's like
Yeah.
subconsciously, you mentioned the self-sabotage. I think for you, given these patterns, it's like this is like what a great way. I just keep diluting my team's focus. Eventually somebody's gonna like drop a contract. Now we gotta go find somebody else. Now I can sell. Now I can be significant
Mm,
once again.
yeah,
So what's landing for you there?
yeah. Well, it totally makes sense in terms of the my focus shifting keeps the employees kind of shifting or guessing, whereas it, it's a really simple business. Like it does, it's there's not a lot of moving parts. There shouldn't be a lot of moving parts. Um, So it's getting really stable in how I'm directing the team and how I'm leading them, and leading by example, so that, I need to not be constantly shifting focus, but stay on message and be okay with, that, or find a different way of reframing the anxiety
Hmm.
that I feel when everything is quote unquote okay, or when there aren't things to do.
100%. And if you took that a step further, right? Because you mentioned like leadership in it. So,
Mm.
how do you think this limiting pattern affects your evolution as the leader in the business?
Well, eventually I don't want to be working in the business at all, and let somebody else just run it, um, while I quote unquote retire. So it but that's not going to happen if I'm not developing that leadership underneath me with the firm, steady hand that needs to be a good leader.
Correct. And so, like, if you imagine that actually happens
Mm.
to this part of you that gets significance from creating problems to solve, that panics whenever there is stability and idleness, like everything about the vision of you stepping away from needing to be in whatever, like the day to day, is moving into that direction. So it's like me succeeding as the leader in my business actually moves me into being totally against all of these subconscious patterns that totally freak out if I actually succeed.
Right.
So, what comes up for you in that reflection?
How would that ever happen if I don't correct before it happens? Because it will just implode at that point.
Correct. So, yeah, applaud you for how open you are to, like, I know this, it's always funner on like the, giving end of these conversations. So yeah, so I just want to acknowledge the receiving end of it, and how quickly you do get to the core of the issue and allowing yourself to actually stay in that space, because it's not fun, right? Like it's not rainbows and sunshine. So I do want to acknowledge that. And if we were to flip gears a little bit, like if you lost the ability to, let's just say, for lack of a better word, create these problems to solve, if you lost the ability to get significance out of constantly performing, who or what would you be?
Ooh, I don't know.
Okay. So if you allow yourself to just sit with it.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, well, be on a beach somewhere drinking a margarita.
Okay. So I mean that
Yeah,
might be what you'd be doing. And
right.
knowing you, I think you'd actually just be doing something else that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Um, but what I just want to reflect back to you
yeah.
firstly, right? It's like I've been in this pattern for so long. The anxiety of it and the anticipation that something's going to go wrong if things are stable and okay and quote unquote boring is so like bred into how I operate and the paradigms with which I view the world that it's actually hard for me to use my imagination and anticipate like who would I be without this. Basically, it's another way of saying like it's hard for you to imagine who you would be at peace with
Mhm.
stability.
Yeah.
So what's landing for you?
But what's interesting, what's coming up is not necessarily who I would be, like, but I connect that to what would I do?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's that doing, the constant of doing, that that drives me.
Correct. And So even when prompted to imagine the possibility of exploring who you would be, because you are someone before you do anything. Like
Right.
you are Tom before Tom is a pilot, before he's a fitness business owner, before he does sales, right?
Mhm.
But it's
Yeah.
like my identity is so rooted in being good at what I do that I haven't even allowed myself the grace and the space to explore, like, who would I be without the doing? Who am I without the doing?
Yeah. Hmm.
So again, what lands there?
Yeah. I mean, you're you're spot on with my identity is so tied to what I do that like for the life of me right now, I just couldn't imagine like if I'm not doing something like what that would look like.
Yeah.
It's still like it's still I was like even like oh, would I volunteer? Would I like go for walks? Would I run marathon? You know, it's like all these things of doing is still the forefront of my head instead of being.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
So are you okay to dive a bit deeper into that?
sure.
Okay. So if we kind of made it a bit more specific, so if you were at peace,
Mm,
whether you're doing or not, what would that look like?
mm, not sure. At peace. Just
Mhm.
I don't like be a good friend, uh, good son, good brother. Uh,
And do you feel like you aren't those things now
yeah, to some extent.
because of the doing or because of something else?
Just because of the relationship, I think.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
And any other aspects to you being at peace?
Mm. Like the not having the day-to-day worry, I guess, of
Okay.
not doing, which again is that circular logic kind of hitting again. Uh, but just being at peace to go for a walk, sit at the park, and not feel like there's a time pressure to do something.
Mm-hmm. And what's the internal feeling right now as you're even prompted to like consider these things?
What the hell would I do? I mean, that literally that's like what's coming up for me. Like,
Okay.
yeah, you can
And
be
that's
at
the
peace.
thought, right? It's what the
Yeah,
hell would I do is the thought. What's the actual
yeah,
feeling?
a little scared,
Right. So
yeah,
anxious. Like I am
anxious. Yeah.
anxious to even imagine who I would be, right? Without like losing the ability. Like it's like I'm threatening your identity by taking away doing. Right. Which is why I
Yeah.
specifically said whether like you're at peace doing or not. And it's like that system is just firing on all cylinders, being like, nah, like run away from there. Like this is not a cool place to be.
Mhm.
So again, what comes up for you with that reflection?
Yeah, anxious about the the not doing because that's so ingrained in everything that we do, right? Or every first question that most people ask somebody that they just met, what do you do? And that's so tied to our identity that it doesn't even like what would I say? Like I'm me. Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very nerve wracking.
And
Yeah,
understandably so, because you've
yeah,
spent so much more time training this
mm,
pattern than any other ones, right? Which is why it's so hard to
yeah,
even imagine an alternative.
yeah.
And if we took this one step further, even beyond peace, Like if you had full self-acceptance,
Hmm.
who or what would you be?
Just really cool kids, you know, being a good friend to friends, and uh, yeah, good family member,
Yeah.
supportive.
And I mean, I know I've started this whole conversation saying like, okay, you've known me from before. I've known you from before. We've had various interactions before. And I mean, it's not like
Yeah,
we know each other super well, but like never would I have considered you like not to be supportive or
huh,
like good to other people. Like just from what I know from my personal interactions with you and like other people that you've interacted with over the years, like that never would have crossed my mind that like you would not be somebody who's supportive or has like your best interests at heart or wants to like genuinely see you succeed.
yeah,
um so I'm curious from the outside looking in, right? Because I asked you basically, okay, well, if you had full self-acceptance, basically your response was like, well, I would just be like a better human,
yeah.
right? And from the outside looking in, I'm like, be like, you're already a wonderful human. So what lands for
Hmm.
you with that like reflection?
Hmm. And maybe the doing is taking away from um, me focusing on those other aspects of life, the non-doing aspects.
Yeah,
And so I kind of feel like I could do better with that.
correct. So it's put a different way.
Hmm.
Like work is not just an accepted way to avoid all of the places within ourselves that we don't want to look, but it's actually celebrated, and you get tangible results and benefits out of it. And there's never like a shortage of novel things for you to dive into to keep all these pieces at bay. So I think what's coming up for you and why you're here is like there's a part of you that's ready to like face those things. Like
Hmm.
at what point do I admit that achievement's not going to fill this hole in my soul?
Yeah,
Okay. So again,
yeah,
what's landing for you there?
yeah, yeah. Well, it's yeah, I mean, achievement will only take you like so far, or take me so far, that um it's just that where does it end, or where does it transform into like the internal, like taking care of the internal so that it's more peaceful.
Yeah. And it's like if that's a desire,
Hmm.
can you really get there with more doing?
Hmm. Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Because if you could, you probably would have done it already,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's where your comfort zone is, it's what you're really good at. So that absolutely makes sense, and I'm glad that that's the part that's landing for you. Um, and I know we can dive deeper into all these aspects, and obviously this is not going to be, one conversation solution to all of these things. But as far as like mapping this out or exploring, what you brought into here, like, does this feel complete for you? Or is there still something left outstanding?
It seems pretty, yeah, pretty complete.
Okay,
Uh,
perfect. Well, again, I
and
thank you.
unexpected.
Sorry, go right ahead.
Well, and unexpected. So it wasn't like I didn't have any really preconceived notions, but like I didn't expect to realize this part of me.
Yeah. And what specifically was the
Well,
unexpected?
just well, the and always searching for something to do as a form of validating my identity.
Mm, Yeah.
which has always been the overachiever, high achiever um, identity. The yeah, I mean the doing, and not getting to a destination.
Yeah. Because it's in many ways it's the wrong tool for the job.
Yeah,
You know, it's like I'm trying to bash a screw in with a hammer and then I'm complaining. It's like, why isn't it working properly? Right. Like it's that kind of thing.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm glad that that resonates because that is usually the big wake up moment. 110%. It's certainly been one of mine. For me, I had to completely crash in order for me to like wake up and kind of hit rock bottom for that. So regardless, it's not a fun like thing to like realize, but at the same time, it is also the jump off point to like the question I ask you, like, well, who would you be without the doing? If you were
hmm
truly at peace, because that is where the good stuff lies. So I'm excited for you, and I thank you for allowing yourself to be witnessed in this way. So, yeah, if you want to close this off, just let everybody know where to find you, who's the best person to find you. Floor is yours for
yeah.
that.
Well, thank you for that. That was great. I really appreciate that. Um, put that into my storybook as well.
You
So,
heard it.
no, my website is probably the best way for people to reach. It's tomjackobs.com. So it's TOMJACKOBS.com. And I work with um, salespeople, sales teams, small businesses that want to increase their sales and have better conversions.
Love it. Well, Tom, thank you very much for being on. As always, we'll include all that in the show notes. Yeah, for everybody else listening, we'll see you on the next one.
Awesome. Thank you.